Welcome to week 3 of the head coach episode. We're here to do the game breakdowns. Yanni's here with me. How's it going, man?
What's up, buddy?
Let's just get right into it. I'll let you take the first one.
Yeah, okay. Patriots at Jets. I went pretty heavy on Ramondre. It's been kind of fun watching him this year. Patriots with a 16 point implied team total. Jets with a 22.5 at home. For the Patriots, you are starting Ramondre, and actually, so last week we had Ramondre and then sit everyone else. But look, Henry got really nice usage last week. He was a pretty popular waiver wire pickup this week. I'm actually starting him in a few leagues where I have like Ferguson hurt. Henry is most definitely startable. They should be, decent amount of passing. They should be trailing. So Ramondre and Henry, you're sitting the rest, and we did want to put a tag on Polk. Polk is on breakout watch. He finally got his first touchdown last week. He appears to be the most talented wide receiver in New England. So keep an eye on him. If he does well in a tough secondary with a tough defensive matchup, I believe he's going to draw Reed in the slot. I know Pop Douglas plays the slot, but Reed or Sauce. He has tough matchups this week. If he does pretty well, that's probably someone you're going to want to go pick up off your wire. Maybe even consider picking him up before the game just in case he does. For the Jets, you're going to start Garrett Wilson and Hall. You're never sitting Garrett Wilson and Hall. Our sort of tricky decision is going to be Rodgers. I've seen him rostered on enough rosters this week. And look, quarterback's weird this year. There are weird things going on. I mean, I could see there being rosters where you're going to roll him out. I would hope you have a better option at this point, but for some people that don't, he's not like a horrible starter or something. You'll probably get good 15 points, hopefully. And then you're obviously sitting the rest of the Jets. Nothing there.
Yeah. Main thing I want to highlight here. Hunter Henry is, in my opinion, a top 10 tight end as of right now. I would project him that way going forward. This is an Alex Van Pelt offense. We've kind of been hammering this all year. It's kind of why we liked Ramondre. This is a team with an offensive coordinator that's going to establish it no matter what. But if you look at his history with the Cleveland Browns, they also get the tight ends involved. Hunter Henry right now is effectively operating is their wide receiver one because the wide receivers like Jalen Polk haven't gotten there yet. I would project Henry as a top 10 until further notice here. He is always liable to kind of like just have a dud week for you, but the tight end position is just tough right now. Just ask the people who went early tight end, and they'll tell you. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Rodgers, I think I wouldn't worry about him at all. I think that the Patriots matchup, they're playing well. It's attackable. There is an argument to be made. This is just a ground and pound game. If the Jets go up early and Rodgers doesn't have to sling the ball over the yard, you could do worse than Rodgers. All right, next we got the Giants going into Cleveland to play the Browns. The Giants have an implied team total of 16 points, and the Browns have an implied team total of 22.5 points. So the Browns heavy favorites this week. Surprising. For the Giants, our only start for you is Malik Neighbors. We're sitting Danny Dimes, and we're sitting Wandale Robinson, and we're tricky decisioning Devin Singletary. For those of you who listened to us last week when we tricky decision Dimes, you're welcome. 20-point game. The quarterback's been tough this year. Then for the Browns, we're starting Deshaun Watson. We're starting Jerome Ford. We're starting Jerry Jeudy. We're starting Amari Cooper. And then tricky decisioning Dante Foreman. So these aren't two great teams, but I think there's a lot to break down here. I'll start on the Giants side. Obviously, last week you had guys get home for the Giants finally, right? Like Malik Neighbors, if you drafted him, you're feeling really great about those 18 targets. If you flexed Dimes, congratulations at Superflex, he did good for you. If you started Singletary, he had a great game. There's stats going around right now showing that Devin Singletary is averaging more yards per carry and forcing more missed tackles than Saquon Barkley. So even though the Giants lost, like if you're a fan, you're not feeling good about the football team, right? Like in terms of having the fantasy assets, you're probably not feeling terrible right now. I would just caution you if you have Giants guys on your fantasy roster. The Redskins are a really bad defense. They're a really bad football team. This Browns team, this is one of the top defenses in the league, whether or not I like their offense or not. Their defense is still very, very good. I see Dimes getting beaten up this game. I think it's going to be hard for Singletary to get going. You Malik Neighbors guys, I don't see it this week. But in terms of what he gave you last week, I think you have to start him. Then we'll go to the Browns side. Encouraging stuff from Deshaun Watson last week. He wasn't great, but he didn't just blow the game like he has in recent weeks. This Giants defense, they're not good. They should be scoring points here. Vegas is giving them the respect is 5.5 point favorites. The main thing I want to harp on here is if you're an Amari Cooper owner, be patient. Be patient. I think that if he's going to have a good week, this is going to be one of them. This Giants defense is not very good. He's been getting the prayer yards, as I like to say. And right now, Jerry Jeudy is outscoring him as a fantasy wide receiver. I don't believe that's sticky. If he pops off this week, if Cooper has a good week this week, might be a good sell high target. And then Dante Foreman has made the list as a tricky decision. He just kind of does this every year. Every year, Dante Foreman, he goes to a new team and he somehow ends up in the starting lineup and being relevant in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, if you're a Jerome Ford owner, you're probably pulling your hair out last week when you saw Dante Foreman start the game. Like he's just straight up was the first running back on the field. He got the only carry within the 20. So yeah, I don't know what his involvement is going to be. I don't know why that is the case, what he was doing in there. I think he's on the radar though. Guys, if you have Jerome Ford, pay attention to what his usage looks like. Hopefully, it goes to him mostly, and Foreman's just kind of a complementary piece. But if this is looking like a 50-50 split this game, I think it's a yikes. You got anything yet want to tack on to this, Yanni?
No, I mean, I think so. I think just out of respect for the fact that he is their starter, where we have Ford as a start this week and we have Foreman as a tricky decision.
Mm-hmm.
In games like this, there's a good chance this is going to be a Foreman game because a lot of Ford's value comes from his passing work. We'll see. We'll see. We need another couple weeks of data. We'll make our decisions going forward. Mary Kay Cabot reported today that it looks like week 8 is the return date for Chubb. They're hoping he's full speed by week 9 or 10. So I would keep an eye on both of these guys. You have them for another 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yep, and no Pierre Strong this week either. Like he's never on anybody's fantasy roster, right? So that's not like actually fantasy relevant, but it is in the sense that he's not going to be stealing carries from these two guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's indirectly relevant for sure. Okay, should be actually a game I'm pretty excited to see. It's going to be the Texans at the Vikings. Texans with an implied team total of 24. Vikings with an implied team total of 21.5 at home. For the Texans, you start everyone on this offense. I know there's been some consternation about Tank Dell's slow start, right? I noticed that he is like getting all this buzz. I have him on a team and I keep getting garbage offers for him. He dropped a 50-yard touchdown. That's the whole thing that happened last week. He dropped a 50-yard touchdown. So he has a really low, I believe he doesn't even have 10 points in half PPR right now. Make no mistake about it. This is a dude who has an 86% route participation on the offense. He is getting out there whenever they're throwing the ball. He's running routes. His air yard share is really healthy. He's going to be just fine. You're starting him again, unless you have something really, so the roster where I'm benching him, I guess I am starting Pollard this week over him, right? Because Pollard's been, a mid-range RB2, high-end RB2. If you have something like that, I understand sitting him, but for the most part, roll him out there, man. And that also includes their starting running back. Pierce is injured right now, and Mixon's dealing with both a hamstring and I believe a mild high ankle is what they think. I think they said he avoided like the serious high ankle, but that mechanism was bad, man. I would assume he's dealing with some combination of an ankle and hamstring. If Akers starts and he is their only healthy running back, pencil him in for 20 to 25 carries. You could do a lot worse for a streamer. Dr. Schultz, Jordan Schultz, tricky decision. He sees enough work in the offense that he's worth mentioning. Your mileage may vary. It just depends where your roster's at with tight end. The injuries are so crazy this year and the waiver wire is so thin. I could see a lot of people starting him. I actually think I went against him last week. For the Vikings, you are starting JJ. You are starting AJ. That is the case. I know AJ's starting to cede some work to Chandler, but he's not giving up the passing down work. For now, he's not giving up the really key. I mean, Chandler actually did have a carry in the red zone last week against the Niners, but for the most part, Chandler is just operating as a change of pace or relief back. Maybe he continues to eat into it. He had over 8 yards of carry against San Francisco. It's something to keep an eye on, but in this game where they will be trailing, where Darnold will be dumping it off, get him out there. You're sitting Addison coming off his weird high ankle issue and all this stuff. I really probably would not have. I have him on 2 different rosters as my wide receiver 5. I'm really not trying to play him. He's there as an emergency wide receiver. I would give him time, see where he's at. Naylor got some serious play from Kevin O'Connell this week. and Sam Darnold, all this buzz on local Vikings media about Naylor, about how fast he is, about how good he is. He had that big play against the Niners last week. I believe he had a touchdown week 1 as well. He's just someone to keep an eye on, more so for DFS. I don't think he's going to be a thing, especially with Addison and Hawkinson coming back for redraft. But keep an eye on him. He's pretty good. And then, depending on how frisky you're feeling, I saw Sam Darnold getting picked up in leagues and streamed this week. There are other streamers that are probably a little better, but we do have him as a tricky decision because there are situations and there are rosters where he's going to be startable this week, and that's fine. He's been, a replacement level waiver wire quarterback.
Fair enough. I actually have nothing to add on this one, to be honest. All right, next one we got the Eagles going to New Orleans to play the Saints. Eagles surprising underdogs here at a 23.5-point team total, and the Saints at a 26-point implied team total. For the Eagles, we're starting Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and Saquon, and we're sitting Goddard. And for the Saints, we're rolling out all of the fantasy relevant options here. It's Carr, Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara. So we'll start with the Eagles first. They're coming off the horrible L against the Falcons on Monday night. I'm not that worried about this offense at all. It's very concentrated right now, especially with AJ Brown out. It's going to be going through Devontae. It's going to be going through Saquon. I almost lean tricky decision with Goddard just because the tight end position is so thin, and I would imagine he's going to be getting more looks without AJ Brown. We have him as a sit though, just because his production this year has been horrible thus far. I wouldn't, the Eagles have other wide receiver pieces like Jahan Dotson, like Brenton Covey or Brenton Covey. I don't even know what his first name is because he's just so irrelevant. I would pump the brakes on that. I don't think so. And then for the Saints, they look good. We got to give them their respect. All last year we were harping on how disgusting this offense was to watch, how Dennis Allen hates offense, how he coached kind of scared and in a turtle shell. Man, Clint Kubiak is, right now he's already getting talked about for potential head coach openings when we're in week 3. It's exciting. In this Eagles defense, they have not stopped anyone. They allowed Kirk Cousins on a peg leg to drive down the field in like 40 seconds. This is a gettable. This is a good matchup. This is not a bad matchup at all. Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope. No, that's it. Not too much to say about that one. In what should be a pretty boring game this week, Chargers going to the Steelers. Chargers with an implied team total of 17, Steelers with 18.5. Because of the Herbert injury, we're kind of just avoiding this offense for the most part this week. You're going to start Dobbins. He is leading the league in rushing yards. You can't really sit him. And has plenty of experience playing the Steelers. If Herbert's injured too, you maybe expect to tick up and dump offs. So get Dobbins out there, sell him high too, please, by the way. For the Steelers, your start is going to be Pickens, your sits are going to be Fields, Warren, and Muth, and your tricky decision is going to be Najee. Kind of the way the backfield works out, it was much more of a split this week with Warren and Najee because Warren's probably back to 100% off of his hamstring. It seems like they were easing him into week 1. So Najee lost kind of that elite workload, that 22 opportunity workload he saw in week 1. So with Najee, he's going to be very matchup based, very dependent on what team he's playing. And one of the best teams in the NFL against the rush is not going to be where you're rolling him out. Again, unless you have to. I understand with injuries, there are a lot of people who probably have to, but don't expect a lot, 7 to 9 half PPR points. Pickens, this was sort of a tricky one. Ted is not a Pickens guy. I am a Pickens guy. He is top 3 in separation per route run in separation per route run and one of the other efficiency metrics on his routes. I forget which one. Derek Brown shared it on Twitter today. He's making everyone's buy low list because of his elite target share and because win rate per route run, route win rate. He's really actually on an individual level performing extremely well. It has been the weirdest thing. 3 holding calls have wiped out his 3 of his biggest plays this year. And then that weird OPI last week took away a touchdown. It's just been really bizarre. Today he did this trippy interview where he was saying Fields is our guy and we go to war together. And then that's my dude. Like he's our guy. So it seems like him and Fields actually have a really good rapport. And importantly, it seems like when Fields moves around, he's looking for him. So I'm calling him a start this week. The Chargers do not have that shadow guy that's going to lock onto Pickens like he's dealt with recently. I like him a lot this week, actually. And I think they're there's a chance they go down early here. And they might have to air it out a little bit. I also think they haven't really opened it up with Fields yet. He has no turnovers. That was the big emphasis on his game, and the big thing I think they're trying to worry about. But for the most part, Arthur Smith has actually called a pretty efficient offense, I think. Not explosive, not prolific or anything like that, just efficient. He gets the ball up and down the field. They haven't closed in the red zone yet. I do think that's coming. Don't know if it's going to be this week, but it seems like their main way to move the ball is through George Pickens. So
Yeah, I guess I'll expand on this Pickens thing a little bit. I don't dislike the player. I think that the Steelers' offense is so disgusting, though. I don't think that he's going to be able to be reliably fed the ball, even if because right now the Pittsburgh Steelers team, that is George Pickens, and then you have a bunch of career wide receiver fours, right? There's nobody else other than Muth to throw the ball to. So yes, it will be concentrated towards him. He's going to get the majority of like the passing work. It's just how much is that worth on this team, especially with
yeah,
Arthur Smith, right? I think that through the first 2 weeks, like the Steelers have made it a point of emphasis to Justin Fields, hey, don't fuck this game up for us. Don't make the stupid turnover. We have a good defense. We'll win on that side of the ball, right? So you're looking at a 2-0 Steelers team that scored one total touchdown. I don't see them unless they fall down like very, very, like if they get down like really bad in the game and they have to throw it out, they have to air it out, then we'll see it. But in a game script like this that is projected to be tight, I think Jim's going to want to establish it too, especially with Herbert hurt. This will I think this will look like the Packers Colts game from last week, where it's just running the ball all the time. I think it's going to be over very quickly. But yeah, I don't have a problem starting Pickens here. I don't think this is a terribly good defense they're playing, even though they're first against rushers and EPA. The fact of the matter is they played the Raiders, who are struggling to run the ball, and they played the Carolina Panthers, who were not a real team last week. So I think we'll see. It's somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I agree. All right, next we got another barn burner. We got the Denver Broncos going into Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. The Broncos have an implied team total of 16.5 points. The Buccaneers have an implied team total of 23 points. It seems a little low to me for the Buccaneers. I think they'll go over that. For the Broncos, we are tricky decisioning Javonte Williams, and we're sitting absolutely everybody else. And I had to fight to get Javonte as a tricky decision. Right now, it is disgusting in Denver, and you want none of it. And for the Buccaneers, we're on the other side of the fence of optimism here. We're starting everyone who's relevant on the Buccaneers: Baker, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rashad White. Man, I wouldn't even absolutely hate giving Jalen McMillan a DFS dart throw, and we're tricky decisioning Bucky Irving, who he's starting to creep in there. Is like he is going to be a factor on this team. I guess we'll start with the Broncos first. Man, they look bad. They look really bad. I don't think it helped they went up against the Steelers last week. But Bo Nix is struggling to get anything done. It's going to take a while for him, and even if he does start getting better, this Broncos team isn't too terribly talented offensively, anyways. It looks doom and gloom. I mean, this is going to be. It's going to have to be a coach. It's going to have to be an elite coaching job from Sean Payton before we start to see anybody be fantasy relevant here. The main reason we put Javonte Williams as a tricky decision, I think it's the same theory as to why A-Chain is being viewed as startable at this point in time. It's just that this offense has nothing. They don't have a quarterback that can do anything. He should, in theory, be catching dump offs. I wouldn't be shocked to see some passes to Javonte Williams to try and move the ball. If they are going to move the ball, I don't see how that's not one of the only ways they can do it. But yeah, it's tough if you drafted Cortland Sutton. I know you didn't spend too much for him, but he's just a total zero at this point. Marvin Mims can't get on the field. Jalen McMillan, he's just not getting the work that he probably should be, especially with an
really.
offense that's this depressing to watch. And then for the Buccaneers, the only thing I really want to highlight here is keep your eyes on Bucky Irving, man. Like there's rumblings that it might start being a takeover for him. Rashad White owners may be in a little bit of trouble. Who knows? If Rashad White gives you a good week this week, he might be someone I'd try and move. I don't feel great about this Buccaneers run game. Even though the team is succeeding, right, and the team is doing well, the Buccaneers have never been a team that want to run the ball. They've never been particularly effective running the ball. Rashad White got you there last week because of the passing work, and it just hasn't really been there for him this year. I still like Baker. I still like the other guys on the Bucs offense, but Rashad White's a little bit weird to me. You got anything you want to add on to this, Yanni?
No, I mean, so I have a share of Rashad White because he fell all the way to like pick 50. And, at that point, I thought I'd take a shot on him. Yeah, he gets there with the passing work. So in games where it's a pass heavy game script, I think he's an okay start. But in games like this where they'll probably have a comfortable lead, I think they're going to give Bucky Irving the most run he's had this year. So just something to keep an eye on. And then also Mike Evans, he draws the Surtain matchup. He might not have the best Mike Evans game again this week. It might be another Godwin week.
Yeah.
Okay, Packers at Titans. Packers with an implied team total of 22, Titans of 18.5. Very odd line for the Packers going to the Titans this week, I think. But for the Packers, pretty straightforward. We start Jacobs. We're sitting everyone else while Love is out. That's it. Obviously, when Love comes back, Reed is going to be a weekly start. You're probably going to have Watson and Dobbs creep up on the radar in good game script games. Tucker Kraft actually becomes totally startable. He's had a little breakout these last couple weeks. But without him, you're not. No way. And not on against a good defense and a fairly low over-under. For the Titans, because Will Levis has been so weird, Pollard's really the only clear-cut start here. The Packers have been gettable on the ground. Spears had his ankle injury. He's just been weird this year with his usage. He's looking more like a straight handcuff, not what we would call like a more premium handcuff or a more usable handcuff where you're going to get something along the way there. No, he's looking like he's strictly if Pollard goes down. Hopkins playing through that partially torn MCL. He's not startable right now, although his snap share did go up last week. Ridley and Levis are both guys that roster depending, you probably are going to either flex or start this week. I have a roster with Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel on it. Or Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, and one of the other injured receivers. I forget which. So I have 300 receivers on that roster. I'm starting Ridley. I don't know if he's someone you want to roll out there, though, with Jair Alexander, like with intention. So he's a tricky decision this week. And then Levis, Carson Wentz Jr. Levis was one of those guys that I found myself in round 15 kind of just taking as a quarterback too, just to see. You bring in the Callahan offensive line system. Bill Callahan's dad comes in there. And I sort of thought that he would grow into this role and do pretty well. But a huge part of that system, because it's like a West Coast plus system, is not being stupid with the ball. Like Joe Burrow did so well in that system because for the most part, Joe's really accurate, really decisive, and makes smart decisions. Will Levis has been atrocious with his decision making the last 2 weeks. He's going to be a tricky decision because the game script should be good. They are at home, and you would have to think at some point he's going to realize his shot at, a $200 million contract. I doubt he'll ever get one, but even a good backup contract, a nice $30-40 million of career earnings. He can still earn that if he plays well. And I would imagine that he's been made well aware that that's what's on the line coming up here. They have a capable backup. So we're going to call them both Levis and Ridley tricky starts.
Yeah, I'll get on the Titans here because this is one of the teams I think I'm probably higher on in the market. Will Levis, despite his Carson Wentz moments, like doing a somersault and throwing the team the other ball, like inside of the other team's red zone, like it's unacceptable. The coach Callahan has said as much, right? Like he's not playing around. Like he's just throwing Levis under the bus to the media. I would not be shocked to see him come out and make sure he's not doing that shit again, right? He's been able to move the chains with this Titans team. This Titans team, they went up against a pretty good Jets defense last week, and they played the Bears, who, as it turns out, another really good defense week one. They were in both of those games for the most part, and quite frankly, there were a couple of Will Levis awful mistakes from being 2-0, really. So they just haven't gotten the breaks. They haven't gotten the play from the key players here, the right play from the key players here. I think that this will turn around. Otherwise, if Levis continues to do this, we're just going to have Mason Rudolph in there. And Rudolph is a nice backup, but he doesn't have the upside that Levis does. Then for the Packers, It's the Malik Willis revenge game, everyone. Malik Willis revenge week. This Packers team, I would not buy into anything here. I think the Packers are going to have a very difficult time doing anything. I think this will be more similar to. No, I think they're going to get shut out here. I'm taking, spoiler alert for the gambling show, I'm taking the Titans plus the 3.5 here. I think that this Titans team, their defense is good enough where they're not going to allow the Packers to just run the ball for 260 yards like the Colts did. I don't see it for this Packers team this week. But yeah. All right, next you got the the Bears going into Indy to play these Colts. The Bears have an applied team total of 21 points, and the Colts have an applied team total of 22.5 points. Our starts for the Bears this week are DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift. We're sitting Caleb, and then our tricky decisions are Keenan Allen if he's out there, and Adunze if Keenan is not out there. For the Colts, we're starting Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, and we're tricky decisioning Michael Pittman and
Alec Pierce.
Alec Pierce. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we'll start with the Bears first. Obviously, a primetime game last week. The Bears got their teeth kicked in by the Texans. We have no option but to start DJ Moore, right? Like the usage is there. It's been there for him. It's just with this offense being absolute dead last in the NFL at yards per play. It's just been brutal for all of the offensive pieces here, but if anyone's going to go off, it's going to be him. I think it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of when Caleb gets it going. So we're still starting him. Swift, this is an interesting one. Swift has been one of the absolute worst runners this year. Like the Bears offensive line is terrible. They're made of like wet tissue paper. They're just getting pushed back on every single play so far. And even though Swift has been the featured guy, like you just haven't gotten anything for that. Good news is this is a get right game for the Bears ground game against this Colts team that just allowed a one-dimensional Packers team to rush for 260 yards on them. Uh, this is the spot for Swift. If he cannot get it going here, yikes. Yikes, all the way around. It needs to be this week for him, which is why we're so bullish on him as a start. So for the Colts, here's the deal. It was a bummer last week. It was not good last week losing to that Packers team. Anthony Richardson, he's just erratic right now. It is what it is. He's still an alien. He's still supremely talented, but he just has inaccuracy issues right now. He has trouble seeing the field. Sometimes he makes some boneheaded throws. That's why we have Pittman and Pierce as tricky decisions. Pittman because he was a fourth, fifth round pick, right? And it probably feels disgusting having him on your roster and rolling him out every week. And Alec Pierce because, I feel like the fantasy community demands it of us. Pierce has had very good like usage metrics so far. He's actually been the wide receiver to own so far in Indianapolis. I don't think it's sticky. Josh Downs is practicing this week. When Josh Downs comes back, I think that it will eat into Pierce's workload. It's going to hurt Adonai Mitchell's workload. And quite frankly, it's just until Anthony Richardson gets more consistent, it's hard to count on these pass catchers getting there long term. Tough matchup against the Bears, too. It's going to be a tough one. I think that if you're an Anthony Richardson owner, like you probably have to roll him out there anyways. But be prepared. Be prepared for it to not look pretty this week. I give all the respect in the world to the Bears defense. They just shut out CJ and the Texans in the second half of the Sunday night game. Realistically, if their offense could do anything, they had a chance to win that game. So yeah, weird one. I'm interested to see. It feels like both of these teams are just almost there. I couldn't tell you who wins this one. No, I think it's a toss up. You got anything to add to this?
No, I mean, what you correctly called those, we're on watch for the Bears being an elite defense, like a real elite defense. Pollard, did okay against them, but Ridley got shut down. And then, Nico Collins did pretty well, but Mixon, Tank, and Diggs all had bad games. So, and I think CJ only had like 14, 15 points. So just, yeah, it's a trend to keep track of. The Bears might not be conducive to fantasy when you're going against them.
To me with the Bears, it's just whenever Caleb it starts clicking for him, right? Like I was watching CJ's post game interview where like the media was kind of picking at him about what he
Yeah.
said to Caleb after the game. There's like some weird like Caleb took it personally or whatever, or like the media thought that he did. And what CJ said is he said, "Yeah, man, it took me like 3 or 4 weeks to get it to like start clicking in this league." I think that Caleb, full disclosure, I was not a Caleb guy coming into this year. I thought that the way he acts was weird, and I thought that it might be an issue if this Bears team struggled, right? That the locker room might turn on him. To me, even though the success hasn't been there, I'm seeing encouraging things from Caleb. He's able to escape as much as he can out of the pocket. He's able to keep his eyes downfield, keep the play alive, and take those shots. They just haven't been there yet. He missed a couple of throws against the Texans, but overall, it's encouraging. I think he will come around. It's just a question of when. They have the Colts this week. I think they play the Panthers within the next 2 weeks, and they play another bad defense in the next 2 weeks. So we could start to see it this week potentially. But until we see it, though, I wouldn't start Caleb. I have Caleb on a roster. He's not leaving the bench for me.
Okay, what Ted has deemed his Super Bowl, because he loves guys on both sides of this one. We have the Panthers going against the Raiders. Andy Dalton's last time out threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he had 59 passing attempts against the Seahawks. We'll see. Panthers with an implied team total of 17, Raiders at 22.5. In that spirit, we are going all in, more so DFS starts, right? More so. I would say for redraft, though, certainly Deontay Johnson, depending on what your roster looks like, you could do a lot worse than to roll him out. But we're calling Dalton, Deontay Johnson, and Hubbard starts this week, okay? I think I am going to make a DFS roster that centers around the Dalton Deontay Johnson stack. I can't wait. Across 10 rosters, 10 redraft rosters, I have either 30 or 40% Deontay Johnson exposure. He was kind of sliding back to like that round 8-9 range, like, pick 90 to 105 a lot of drafts. And at that point, I was taking shots on him. Even like I saw him going around pick 75, 80. I thought that was fine. I kind of expected a lot out of him this year because I thought they were going to force feed him. Look, they said Canales said in the preseason that his game plan is we need to find Deontay Johnson. That's how we're organizing this offense. I take him at his word. There's no reason for him to say it. If not, they went out and got him. So if he has a competent quarterback and he tends to always be top 10 in these, with separation and win rate on routes, yeah, Deontay Johnson. And then Hubbard looked better last week, a lot better. It looked like they favored Hubbard over Sanders last week. And I do think Canales said we're going to run the cover off the football. That was the rationale for a lot of people going in and taking Brooks, even though we weren't going to get the first month of him. He's off the ACL. People were still willing to do that on the basis of Canales' run game. Rashard White was the number 2 or 3 overall running back last year. So, but we are going to sit Sanders and we're going to flag Leggett as a sit here. But whenever we list a player, obviously they have to be fantasy relevant for us to list them. You notice Adam Thielen's not listed. But Leggett has shown flashes this year, and he's a hyper talented player in terms of athlete. No, I wouldn't say talented, athletic. In terms of as an athlete, the guy's a freak. And I wonder if they're going to take some shots with him. I think they got him to unlock that portion of the field and let Deontay kind of use his route running and Adam Thielen underneath. So just keep an eye on Leggett. He may end up on waiver wire ads at the end of the week. For the Raiders, number 2 in passing yards in the NFL right now is Minshew. And in that spirit, if you're looking for a streamer, more so for DFS, you are going to start Minshew in this matchup. This is an easy matchup, man. This is an easy team to pick on. Derek Carr, went off against the Panthers. And Minshew's 2 guys, Bowers and Adams. Bowers is already looking like a top 3 or 4 tight end in football. He's probably the fantasy and dynasty number 1 tight end right now. He's probably one of the 3 or 4 most valuable assets in PPR, probably one of the 5 most valuable in half PPR. And I would not be surprised if he climbs that ladder as the season goes on. Beautiful. There was videos going around of his route running this week. Just fantastic, man. And then Minshew is actually hitting Adams. I know I saw a lot of people saying sell Adams off his big week, sell him high. I guess it depends what you can get for him, but honestly, plug him into your roster and feel really good about rolling him out there. Depending on what price you paid, you're probably actually pretty happy with his production so far through 2 games. Don't overthink it. What did I see? Who did I see someone say to sell him for that annoyed me enough that I texted Ted about it? Do you
Let me
remember?
see.
Do you remember I sent you someone that they said
Investigating.
if
Investigating.
yeah, okay, we'll do that while I'm going through here. Look, so we're gonna sit Myers and Madison. Madison's actually a little interesting, right? He has a 20 half PPR points through 2 games. He has 2 touchdowns, but he's worked more in their third down and passing down role. 10 of his points came off the 45-yard touchdown reception he had. So this is not a game script that profiles well for him. And Myers, same thing. You don't want their third option passing attack like the Raiders. Zamir White, we're putting him as a tricky decision and bust watch. What that means is he should have a good game this week. If he does not have a good game this week against the Panthers, after the coach said it's not his fault, right? He's flagging the O-line for not doing their job. But they may just elect to, from this point on, short pass the ball more. If it's really going to look that bad, they have the guys to do it. And they may end up cutting down on how much they're really running. With White, you were banking on the volume. Last year, he had serious volume with Aiden O'Connell. He had that stretch of last month. I started him in 2 championships last year. He's on bust watch. Keep an eye. See what you want to do with him.
I think it was for Neighbors. It was Neighbors.
No,
Would you
because that
do?
one. Oh yeah, that was to piss you off. They said, yeah, if you can
Yeah.
sell Devontae Adams, if you're lucky enough to sell Devontae Adams for Neighbors, if you're in a casual league, do it.
Listen, boys. Listen, boys. This is about to be the "I told you so" bowl between the Panthers and
Neighbors.
the Raiders. Listen,
Oh,
it's going to be the "I told you so" bowl because all of my priors, a lot of the reason I like this Panthers team, almost all of the reason I like this Panthers team was because of Dave Canales and what he's been able to do over his career, getting the most out of not great quarterbacks. What I did underestimate at the beginning of this year is number one, how terrible Bryce Young is and how he's like a pee wee football player. He's not a real football player. And two, how bad this Panthers defense is. Listen, the theory here on the Panthers is their defense is going to give up points every single week, and they're going to be forced to throw the ball. And Dalton's not afraid to spin it, man. Deontay Johnson, all of the guys are back on the menu. I would fantasy managers see what Legette's usage is. I would not be shocked to see him pop up as a waiver wire on the waiver wire show next week. I think, especially if Dalton looks his way, he's going to be talked about here. And then, Gardner Minshew. He's not a bad quarterback. He's just not a bad quarterback. He is the word I've used to describe him all season, and I will continue to do, is fine. I think that this Raiders team, right? Like they struggle very mightily to run the ball. Zamir White's looking like a bust to me. If he doesn't get home here, I don't think he ever will. But yeah, man, like this Raiders team with Brock Bowers' emergence is turning into a short passing offense to me. I would expect them to start pivoting that way. I think coming into the year, Antonio Pierce wanted to be a running team, but man, this Raiders team with Gardner Minshew steering the ship, they look to be like a dink and dunk, short passing over the middle, get Brock Bowers heavily involved type of team. So, yeah, this is my Super Bowl. I think I probably like the Raiders here, but we'll see. Maybe Panthers over 20 points. I think they'll go over their Vegas projected at a minimum. All right, next we got the Miami Dolphins going into Seattle to play the Seahawks. The Dolphins have an implied team total of 18.5 points, and the Seahawks have an implied team total of 23 points. Our starts for the Dolphins this week are Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill. Tricky decisions are Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. Welcome back, brother. For the Seahawks, our starts this week are Gino, DK, JSN, and Zach Charbonnet, my champion, and we're sitting Lockett. So a lot to talk about in this one. I'm actually really happy I got this game. We'll start with the Dolphins side. Man, so Tua just hit the IR, minimum 4 games out. This Dolphins offense, it's not going to look the same. It's going to look gross. You just got to have some faith that McDaniel will be able to scheme up something in the interim to keep your studs eating to some extent. Waddle to me, if you can afford it, is a sit. Like Waddle just disappears when it's not Tua out there. Part of the reason I love Waddle so much in this offense, I was drafting him this season, is because of his chemistry with Tua. When Tua was a rookie, when Waddle was a rookie, they were out there. They had this weird mind meld, and it just isn't the same without Tua out there orchestrating the offense. Tyreek Hill is a start because you just have to, right? Like he's potentially the player number 3 off the board in drafts. He's still, nobody tilts the field like Tyreek when he's on. It's just whether or not the quarterback can get him the ball. And then the last thing I want to touch on with at least Miami side is we are officially on backfield watch here. If Mostert is back in this game, I think we need to, as fantasy managers, be heavily, heavily, heavily watching what the split is. Because if Mostert is back and playing in this game, you officially have HA and Mostert, Jeff Wilson. I think he just went down with injury, and Jalen Wright in the mix for this Miami backfield. We'll see. We'll see what the usage is. Mike McDaniel said that it's hard to not get a guy like HA in the ball more, but let's see his coach speak index rating after this game. It could be spooky for HA owners here. I know right now he is the fantasy running back like 2. Sell high for me. If you watched the previous episode, you'll know I'm selling all my HAs where I can. We'll see. I'm not enthralled by the Seahawks defense personally. For the Seahawks, this was an interesting week for them, right? I think this Dolphins team is not where we expected them to be, right? Obviously, with the Tua injury, obviously, I think their defense, as Yanni correctly flagged, is not one of the better defenses in the league, like we might have thought. DK should be facing a Jalen Ramsey matchup. I like DK in that spot, to be honest with you. Jalen Ramsey's a good player, but DK is a giant freak. Like it looks good for him. And just as a whole, really, the Seahawks passing game, I don't like this team. It's no secret I do not like the Seahawks team. But the usage with Brian Grubb last week against the Patriots, if you saw the Geno's passing chart, they were not scared to air the ball out. I think we might be turning a corner here. For JSN, it really was a breakout game for him last week. It seems like the era of Lockett as wide receiver 2 in Seattle is probably over. JSN, if you drafted him, congratulations. It's finally starting to pay off for you. I would be I'd be starting him this week where you can, as long as you don't have a stacked wide receiver room. And then Charbonnet, he's going to get you there. He's going to get you there as long as Kenneth Walker's out. I heard some analysts talking about Charbonnet's efficiency, like you Flock. I like Flock a lot, but I think he's wrong on Charbonnet being a bad player. Charbonnet,
Trash.
what was that?
He trashed Sharbs last week. Yeah. So
How dare Flock? How dare Flock do that? Listen, I think it's hard to be successful when your offensive line is really bad, and the Seahawks offensive line is really, really bad. But he's going to get the usage, so he should be getting there.
yeah, so I pulled it up while you were talking. In his first 2 games this year, he has 30 total opportunities, 110 yards, 7 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So
Not
I
bad.
mean, if you're averaging 3 to 4 receptions, 50 to 60 yards, and a touchdown per game, that is a weekly starter. It doesn't matter if he's been a little inefficient or whatever. You start him whenever you can.
Fun fact for the fans: my underdog roster that is in first right now in its group, my leading scoring running back is Zach Charbonnet, and that's a roster with Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry on it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, he
working.
has
It's working, boys. Like he'll get you there this week. If you drafted Charbonnet, you're smart. You're a smart person.
just to inform the argument. Me and Ted have argued for years. I'm a huge Kenneth Walker guy. He doesn't like Kenneth Walker. He's always had Sharps rostered in our league. I've always tried to grab Kenneth when I can. It's a point of contention between us.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's all
I
right. We just
think
see it different.
if anything, seeing Charbonnet get full run out here, I think it goes to show you that the Seahawks, like the line is just not good, right? Like they
Yeah,
don't get push ever.
right.
So, Kenneth Walker, I've always been beating the drum that he's just massively inefficient, right? Like he has those explosion plays, right? Like he's a very fast player, and sometimes he'll take one to the house. But I've always kind of been of the opinion, man, this guy just runs into the back of his offensive line all the time. I think now seeing Sharps in here, I'm not sure how much of that is a Kenneth Walker problem, and how much of that is a
Yeah,
Seattle Seahawks line problem.
yeah.
So
Well, let me know when you're done. I just have a quick note about Lockett to toss on. Tell me when you're done with
yeah,
your
I'm
part.
done. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, just as a Niners fan, dude, I've always respected that guy. He's always made sick plays usually against the zone or whatever when he gets in there. I don't know, just it's a mini era, a very mini era, but he is a Super Bowl winning player. He did do fantastic in their Super Bowl. I don't know, just always respected Lockett. I'm kind of bummed to see him getting older, but it does seem like it's coming to a close.
Yeah.
Okay, and this one I think should be one of the most exciting games of the week, and from fantasy perspective, loaded with options. Lions going to the Cardinals, part of that 13-game indoor season that Jared Goff has coming. Lions with an implied team total of 27.25. Cardinals with an implied team total of 24. I believe it's 24.25. I think I
Yeah,
forgot to type
probably.
in.
There's never a line with a quarter point in it. It's probably
No.
0.25.
Yeah, I'm right here. Let me check it real quick. But basically, the general idea is for, hold on. Yeah, 3-point line. Yeah, so it's 27 and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, 27 and a half. Wait, no, I'm sorry. It's 24 and a half, 24.25, 27. Not that that's a huge deal, but just so you know.
Yeah.
For the Lions, start everyone. I know there's been, again, some angst about the Sam Laporta reroll. You know, one of the things that I think was a little bit overvalued with his ADP for those, I mean, I saw him, he went the highest he went in one of my drafts, and these aren't big, these are $50 to $100 buy-in leagues, but I mean, that's, playing for 600 to whatever, $1,200. I saw him go as high as 28th overall, which I was pretty surprised about. Like, oh my God, man, like at the 2-3 turn. And I saw him go as low as in me and Ted's league. Mr. Ted took him early 40s, mid 40s, right?
Yep.
And part of what I don't know was factored in is he did have a hamstring after having a series of soft tissue and tissue injuries last year. I know there's some concern about it. He will come around. He is still one of the 3 or 4 best tight ends in fantasy and probably in the NFL too. He was TD dependent last year, and part of that is Jared Goff, I believe, is 4th in expected fantasy points this year and 29th in what they would call bad luck rating, just basically things not breaking his way when they should have in the red zone. Ted watched more of that game than I did last week. He said it actually was a Jared Goff issue getting in the red zone. I probably should have gone over it. I had midterms this week. I didn't have time to go back and watch games. But look, start everyone on the Lions. Let's wait and see. Maybe buy low on Laporta, but you're rolling out all the studs there. Every one of them in a game like this when they have an implied team total of over 27 points. For the Cardinals, that thing happened again this year where nobody takes Connor seriously because of his injuries, even though he's only missed, I believe, an average of 3 games a year, maybe 4 games a year for the last 4 years. He sits there in round 6 or 7. Then he comes out and he produces in a top 10 points per game fantasy basis every week. Until he's hurt, you will continue to roll him out as an RB1. That's just what he is. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler looking like Matthew Berry's ride or die, looking like a great call. McBride looking like the tight end 1 overall this year. And Marvin Harrison Jr. had the breakout last week. If you're an owner, you had to have seen everything you were worried about. Hit a top speed of over 20 miles an hour for those concerned. Just awesome offense, really concentrated offense. You basically have a little stud feeding his 3 studs. Now, normally what happens with Kyler is he gets banged up later in the year and his play drops off a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't happen because he's a really fun player when he's good in the league, but we'll see. Until that happens, roll them all out. And really, probably after that happens, you're still going to roll them all out. And then we're going to have the human Dortch. He it's been okay in PPR the first week. He had a down week last week, but in a high-scoring game like this where they're airing it out, you expect him to see his targets. Probably more of a DFS play, not a redraft play. But keep an eye on Dortch. I think Dortch is perfectly reasonable if you want a cheap guy to throw in your DFS this week.
Yeah. I'll talk. I have a couple things as a Laporta holder. I think it is important for me to mention this. I'm not panicked on the guy, but I think there is an argument to be made that part of the reason his production is down and he's not getting the looks is the Jameson Williams breakup. Like Jameson Williams, his usage has changed such that he is getting looked at a lot. And Laporta, man, it's been tough sledding. Like he was generally the tight end 1 off the board. Unless you had a league where somebody picked Kelsey first, that happens sometimes. But I believe he has like a 9% target share in the offense right now, which is disgusting. It is disgusting. I would don't freak out about it. I think that he will get it going eventually. But I think tight end 1 overall is off the table, boys, because that other guy, the guy on the other team, is probably who we should have drafted instead. Trey McBride. Yeah, that he's the one to own, I think, here. But yeah, just don't panic on Laporta too much. And yeah, I don't know. This Lions team looks a little weird to me. I don't know. I might think the Cardinals might win this straight up. Just gonna come out and say it.
Yeah.
I like this Cardinals team. Like as long as they can stay healthy, as long as Kyler's healthy, Marvin Harrison continues to look good. Man, the sky's the limit for that team. Excited for you out
So
in Phoenix.
Daniel Jeremiah had an interesting quote about that this week when he was asked how much are you worried about teams like the Niners or the Ravens or the Lions with how they've looked, right? And he said, not at all, because at the end of the day, that physicality, running around the field, slamming people, grinding the football, big mashing O lines, that's what wins out later in the season, in November and December and January.
Well,
Um,
if you're
I,
gonna say that though, right? Like, don't you have to? If you're gonna be a physical ground and pound team, like part of that is also having a good defense, right? And this Lions defense is not good. Like they don't play like the Steelers in the sense that they have a great line. They're just gonna run it down your throat and then not let you do anything. I if scale of
good
one to
luck.
10, I'm like 4 panicked or 5 panicked on the Lions as a whole. They just not might be as good as everybody thought coming into the year. They're not a bad team, but Super Bowl favorite, I don't know about that one, Chief.
They weren't good last year on defense.
Eh.
Apparently, CJ Gardner Johnson makes a huge impact. Apparently, he is a force multiplier on defense. Because, like, yeah.
When he's not getting burnt by Darnell Mooney on Monday night, he is
Yeah,
just making the
or
Lions significantly better for some reason.
torched by Jaden Reed when I'm playing him.
All right. I think this one is me. We got the Ravens going into Jerry World to play the Cowboys. The matchup of, I guess the Cowboys aren't 0-2, but it feels like they are after they just got dog walked by the Saints last week. The Ravens have an implied team total of 25 points. The Cowboys have an implied team total of 23.5 points. For the Ravens, we're starting Lamar, we're starting Zay Flowers, we're starting Mark Andrews, and we're starting Derrick Henry. We're not really sitting anyone, and our tricky decisions are Hill and Likely. We'll talk about that more in a minute here. And for the Cowboys, we're starting the Dak CD connection. That's their entire offense. It just is at this point in time. We're sitting Zeke, we're starting Rico Dowdle, we're starting Brandon Cooks, and we're starting Jalen Tolbert. And we're tricky decisioning Ferguson or Luke Schoonmaker. Just depends on who's available. If Ferguson is available, we obviously feel much better about him than Schoonmaker, but if Ferguson misses, we think Schoonmaker's fine. So we'll start on the Ravens side here. I I don't know how they're 0-2. It's kind of shocking to me. I don't think they've played terrible football. It's just the breaks haven't gone their way. Lamar has been getting you there as a fantasy option, and honestly, you got to feel great if you're a Zay Flowers drafter. This dude, he's awesome. He's not like he's not gonna give you the fantasy output of a CD Lamb, right? But the dude is getting looked at constantly. He is clearly a focal point in the offense in the Todd Monken system. Congratulations if you have him. Feel great about that. Andrews, we finally got a little bit of reassurance for the Andrews owners that hey, he's not dead yet, right? Like I remember week one, Yanni said Andrews looks like he's running in quicksand right now. He's not dead yet. He'll still be available, not available, but he'll still be good enough for fantasy, especially with the tight end position as it is. I think that the dream of a top two or top three Andrews tight end scoring season is probably dead with Likely's involvement, but he should still be a decent fantasy option. And then Derrick Henry, I've seen a lot of people low on this guy. He would personally be a buy low target for me if you can get him. We know the deal with Henry, right? He's a big giant dude who's a pain in the butt to tackle. He's going to get a lot of touchdowns. This Ravens team, I don't think they're going to be missing the playoffs here. I think that's one of the teams that will come back from the 0-2 hole. And he's just gonna score a lot of touchdowns. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Isaiah Likely, I mean, I know people were excited about him, getting him on the waivers week two, I guess, for the week two waivers, but it just wasn't there for him last week. His usage wasn't operating as the primary guy like a lot of people had projected. I think he's still a good player. I think that the Ravens have a big three in terms of pass catchers of Flowers, Andrews, and Likely. So I would expect them to run 21 personnel to, have their three best players on the field. It's going to get better for Likely owners. Don't panic. Don't get pissed off and drop him or anything, right? He's going to be a factor. It's just Andrews isn't dead yet. And then Justice Hill, I mean, for me, he's more of a handcuff. He's projecting right now to get the passing work because they're not dumping it off to Henry really. So he's more of a sit to me, but I'm fine with tricky decision if you need a couple points. And if Henry ever goes down, man, Hill's a smash. Hill's a smash at least until Keaton Mitchell comes back. Then for the Cowboys, it's very simple. It's just the Dak and CD show. That team goes as far as that connection goes. We're sitting every single running back. This Cowboys team, in my opinion, Dowdle is the one to own, but it's a disgusting backfield, and the Cowboys have no interest in establishing it. They're just a Dak team. They're a Dak and CD team at this point with like whoever the wide receiver two is going to be. We personally believe it is the tight end and not either a Brandon Cooks or Jalen Tolbert, so we're kind of planting our flag there. When Ferguson comes back, I have him projected as a top 10 tight end rest of season. Like, yeah, like I would probably like him better than Hunter Henry, and I already said Hunter Henry's top 10, so I'd imagine Jake Ferguson he might be getting close to top 5 for me. Yanni, you got anything to add to this one?
No, the Hill thing is more just in full PPR. He's getting like 4 to 6 catches a game, and maybe 20 or 30 yards of those. So, in full PPR, he has that sort of baseline, like 6 to 9 points you're going to get just off the catches. So it's really more either an emergency play or a cheap DFS play. That's kind of why he's on the radar. And then, yeah, again, Dowdle, we all have those 1 or 2 roster spots we let float on our roster that we sort of just churn over until we find value. I noticed Dowdle's on waivers in a lot of my leagues. I would pick him up just in case, especially before this week where they might have to pass a little more while they're down. Maybe you see some more dump offs. Just to me, he is the one at the end of the day that is going to end up being their premier back. And I'm aware the prevailing fantasy sentiment seems to be you don't want to own any of them, and it won't matter if one of them becomes the back. And I think that's reasonable. I think there's enough evidence to say that's maybe the most likely outcome. But the upside of Dowdle is you get a top 10 or 12 offense and you get their lead running back. And it might just be for the cost of occupying your 15th roster spot for a week. Something to think about.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable keeping Dowdle as a roster stash. I think the long-term bet should be him, right? Like Dalvin Cook, he's toast. Zeke looks toast to me. Like Dowdle's the only guy with any juice there in that backfield, and I don't think Dowdle has that much juice, but it's better than what the other options are. So,
yeah. All right, we have the 49ers at the Rams. So help me God, man, if the Niners drop this game. Oh, man, it's going to be a rough start to the year. The 49ers falling out of the top 10, most top 10 power rankings I saw this week did not have the 49ers in it. So that's cool. 25.75 at the Rams with an implied team total of 18.75. For the 49ers, obviously we have Debo missing a week or two. Obviously you have CMC on the IR. Purdy, Kittle, BA, Mason, and then Jennings. So the thing about the 49ers, right, it's not like a small uptick. You get a sizable uptick in projected production from Brandon Ayuk and Kittle when Debo's out. I can't wait. I have 3 or 4 Kittle rosters. I've been trying to trade like crazy for Ayuk before he goes off. I know he's still rusty. I know it may still be rough, but I'm in. It's probably going to be more Kittle because he's the one who's in there 100%. Mason, currently second in the NFL in rush yards. I know there's been some complaints from the PPR guys. He doesn't catch the ball enough. Sure, he's not going to catch the ball enough. He's going to get 20 to 25 touches in the top 3 scoring offense. Start him every week. And then Jennings, this is my favorite one, though, is to talk about Jennings. Juwan Jennings is one of those guys that only 49ers fans know exactly how good this is. This dude starts fights like once a week, probably, just because he doesn't stop blocking till the whistle. He throws dudes over water coolers, over training tables. There's a great Shanahan interview from last year where they asked him, like, what's Juwan's deal? Because he got in a fight. He threw a guy into his fucking Gatorade table. And Shanahan goes, he plays to the whistle. And they were like, well, do you think he's too physical? Are you worried about him getting in? He goes, no, Juwan plays to the whistle. That means until the whistle's blown, that dude's out there laying people out. He's lined up at fullback before. He would have been the Super Bowl MVP if they had won. Time and time again, if one of the big 2 guys goes down, Juwan Jennings steps up and plays his best game. I saw him getting picked up in leagues everywhere this week. That's so heartening to me to see. We don't have Ricky Pearsall yet. Shanahan, what Chris Sims calls the Shanahan trust tree. He's very weird with who he trusts to be out on the field or not. Cowing looked great in preseason, but I would imagine we haven't seen him really take a snap this year because Shanahan does not trust him yet to be where he needs to be. Expect a big Jennings game. He is going to be someone I load my DFS rosters with this week. And then for the Rams, in their current state, you're really just starting Kyron. And even then, Kyron has not been efficient with his touches. He hasn't ceded work to Blake Corum like we guessed, but also, I don't really blame his drafters. You can't predict that Puka and Cup were going to get injured this year.
And three
Uh,
starting offensive linemen as well.
and
They're
three
just
starting
decimated.
offensive.
Yeah.
That's not really like, you shouldn't feel silly that you drafted Kai, even though me and Ted were out on Kyron at ADP. I have 0 shares. Ted has 0 shares. It was not someone I was willing to touch at that range. Ted thinks it's a talent issue too, a little bit. I would say more situation this year, but in any case, neither of us were willing to. But you don't really get to victory lap that. That is just a crazy series of events. And the Niners have been there, man. I actually do feel bad because they had a good enough team this year to probably compete, I thought. So you're starting Stafford, or you're sitting Stafford, you're sitting the wide receivers. The wide receivers are just because the Niners are a pretty good secondary. They're pretty good. I know they got torched last week by Jefferson, but everyone's going to get torched by Jefferson. Maybe again consider. I like some of these other guys a little more as stashes. Maybe a little Jordan Whittington stash before the game. But if he draws the Demo matchup, it's the Rams are going to get stuffed, at least in the passing game. They would probably be a very Kyron heavy game. But Cody Parkinson, he had a bad game last week. He had a good game week 1. I just think they're going to need someone to move the ball, and it tends to be easier to find room with your tight ends. They're going to be trailing the whole game. I don't hate him as a DFS shout this week.
Yeah. I'll just kind of speak on the Rams really quick. Fantasy managers, keep your eyes on the Rams and what they do on offense this week. Traditionally speaking, Matt Stafford, being Matt Stafford's wide receiver 1 is like the best possible fantasy position you can be in. So I would just keep your eyes on guys like Jordan Whittington. Tutu Atwell, I think the ship has sailed on him, but he could be a relevant player to some extent. And then Tyler Johnson, is that the other one?
It's Robinson, Johnson, Whittington.
Yep. So to me, I would keep your eyes on Tyler Johnson and Jordan Whittington. If one of those two guys can step up in the interim and fill that security blanket, Cooper Kupp / Puka Nacua, depending on what season it was, right? One of those guys could be very fantasy relevant, unless it's just Kyron that gets all the work. So just keep your eyes on it. I think there's some value there. If you picked up Whittington or Tyler Johnson this week on waivers, you might have saved yourself some fab if one of them looks really good. And then Juwan Jennings, he's a dog. Seeing Jordan Mason and Juwan Jennings, two of my favorite 49ers that nobody ever really acknowledged or looked at. Like, man, seeing them in the start list, seeing them as like key pieces to this team, it's kind of trippy. I mean, this Niners team, they're gonna blow out the Rams, man. Like last week was unfortunate. It hasn't been the best start to the season, but this is a get right game. This is tied for the highest line in Vegas right now. 49ers, they're the second biggest favorite of the week. Start your Niners with confidence and don't freak out. Don't freak out. CMC owners, be patient. It'll be good. All right. Next, we got the Chiefs going into Atlanta to play the Falcons. The Chiefs have an implied team total of 25 points. The Falcons have an implied team total of 21.5 points. For the Chiefs, we're starting Mahomes, Kelsey, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. We are sitting Samaje Perine, and then we're tricky decisioning Carson Steele. Then for the Falcons, we're starting Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, and we're tricky decisioning Kirk Cousins, and Darnell Mooney. So we'll start with the Chiefs first. Obviously, you had the Pacheco injury last week. He's going to be out for, it looks to be 8 to 10 weeks, potentially longer than that. I've seen some reports that it might be until the playoffs that we see him. So we're kind of left with a void in the offense, right? And what's going to happen here? We're sitting Perine and Steele because what we are projecting is that the neutral pass rate for the Kansas City Chiefs explodes. We think they're going to, instead of trying to use Carson Steele as a one-to-one replacement of Isaiah Pacheco, they're just going to throw the ball more. If you're a Kelsey owner, if he's going to get it, going, I think this would be the week to start. Rashee Rice, it's already felt great owning him. It might feel even better. Mahomes, I know he didn't do good for you last week. He didn't have a great week one. You might start seeing the MVP season Mahomes from 2 years ago, where he was just kind of forced to throw it all over the yard because he didn't have any help. And Xavier Worthy, he's a nice piece. We prefer Carson Steele over Samaje Perine. Perine, this is like the third team he's been on where he has done nothing and has not been a running back of any choice involvement at any point. He's always kind of been there, but he doesn't do much, right? He was the same way in Denver. He was the same way in Cincinnati. They're running out of bodies there, so he's going to be featured to some extent, but we prefer Steele to potentially fall into the end zone, right? So that's why he's there as a tricky decision. Then for the Falcons, encouraging signs from them last week. They're coming off a high on Monday night. Christian or not Christian Kirk Cousins. People were asking if he was already done. He had something for the haters though on that last drive. Good for him. I don't think he's all the way back, but to me, he did a couple things that show improvement. I think, he's a good guy. He's fun to root for, right? He's just a nice guy, and it's nice to see him not be dead yet. I think Bijan, London, Pitts, they're self-explanatory. They're your studs. If you're a Drake London owner, I think the targets will come around to him. And then Darnell Mooney, we're just flagging as a tricky decision because he got you there on Monday night, and we like him as a player. I think he could do worse at a flex position or a DFS lineup. You got anything to add to this one, Yanni?
No, you totally reminded me. Have you ever heard that Stavros Halkias bit? He's a huge Ravens fan. He does that thing about there's just something about Joe Flacco I like and I trust, and something about Lamar just doesn't sit right with me. It's like always, because Baltimore fans are racially biased. I don't know, you just totally remind. I just like Kirk Cousins, man. He's just a trustworthy fella. I don't know what it is about him. Um,
Well, it's the quarterback, man. You've seen the quarterback, right?
yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's funny. He's like a wholesome. He's like a soccer dad. He's
Yeah.
like a sketch drilling dad. Feels like he'd call you sport.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, nothing to add. I personally prefer Perine to Steele, just because I think his role is more stable. I think it's going to be a weird thing with Hunt and Steele on first downs. No, not those. Okay, Jaguars at Bills. We're waiting. We're waiting for Trevor Lawrence to get right. He does normally get right, even if he starts down. I saw him dropped in a lot of fantasy leagues. I sort of understand. I mean, I opted for a Geno Smith share over him this week. I opted for a Derek Carr share over him this week. If I get it, but I also, if you're hurting at quarterback and you can stash him, I would. I do think he gets right. Don't know if it's this week. Implied team total of 20.5 against the Bills at home. Implied team total of 25. For now, we're starting ETN and we're starting Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. is not getting the target share we would hope for, but part of that is the anemic Jaguars offense. He had that big catch, that sick downfield catch last week. Brian Thomas Jr. was a guy who could have been a top 10 pick in other wide receiver classes. He was just in an absolutely loaded wide receiver class. So I'm going to say you start him. I know the Bills have been pretty tough. I mean, they blanked Marvin Harrison Jr. They gave the Dolphins their problems. I mean, that was probably to do with Tua too, though. I think Hill had 5.7 half PPR points in that game, and Waddle had like 6. So really good secondary. I just think it's going to be a lot of passing, and I think Brian Thomas Jr. is sort of breaking out a little bit. So he's kind of inching his way up toward a weekly start here. Your sits are going to be Kirk and Gabe Davis, and your tricky decisions are going to be Lawrence and Ingram. Ingram is just because I don't think he's healthy. He got pulled the last minute last week. Lawrence has a very positive game script here. I just don't know. That defense is good, and he's looked bad, right? But he had like a nice, I think, 30 or 40 yards of rushing last week. Again, it's really roster dependent. I'd probably start him over like Sam Darnold this week. I'd start him over Caleb Williams. Who else is in that tier? I mean, would you rather like Derek Carr at Philly? I'd rather start Derek Carr.
Yeah, I'm on Carr there.
Minshew, I'd probably start Lawrence over Minshew, I think.
Yep, I'd start Geno over T-Law.
I'd start Geno over Lawrence, right? So he's like in that tier, those streaming replacement Kirk, I'm seeing dropped in leagues. I don't know how I feel about that because he was so productive last year, but he just hasn't. I'm in a full PPR league that is a thin waiver, and someone dropped Kirk to waivers. Okay, and then for the Bills, pretty straightforward. You're starting Allen, you're starting Cook. You are still starting Kincaid with his route participation, with his target share. They made a concerted effort to get him screens last week. I think you're going to see his role. He's actually a buy low for me, especially with the state of the tight end position this year. Something I've been harping with Ted and with everyone that's been panicking in general. Offenses are not really representative of what the end of year rankings will be until after week 4 or 5. It's four, but 5, I would say. Whatever the rankings and the usage and the stats and the averages look like by the end of week 5 can be extrapolated out to the end of the season rankings. Right now, it just can't be. It's been 2 weeks. You are starting Kincaid. I highly doubt you have a better option A, and B, he's going to come around. A little bit of a debate between me and Ted and the fantasy community as a whole. My opinion about Keon Coleman is that he's not a good football player. I love him. I'm a funny guy. I show his interviews to my mom when he was going through his rookie interviews. I'd go over to my parents' house and show him those things. I thought it was so funny. Really cool kid. And I hope he works out. And it seems like Josh Allen really likes him. He did not get separation in college. He was not like necessarily a sharp route runner in college. And he didn't have a good contested ball catch rate in college. So why on earth his separation is not going to get better at the next level? The guys he's competing with are way better at the next level. I didn't see any reason for them to take Keon Coleman. They could have had Worthy. B, for him to excel in the professional level. I would have drafted Shakir. He went so early. He started getting pulled so far up in drafts that I wasn't comfortable where he went. He was my favorite to be their lead this year. So far, he's the most productive fantasy receiver. He has not been treated, though. He's certainly not like their X or their number one receiver. The offense is running through him. He's just had more catch and runs. He gets, the dink and dunk stuff over the middle and runs with it. So they're both going to be tricky decisions this week. This is a team that is gettable through the air. It should be if the Jaguars figure it out, it should be a pretty explosive game, right? So they're both on the tricky decision radar. I've actually gone against a roster starting Shakir every week this year. So I think through injuries, a lot of people are rolling out their wide receiver 4s and 5s. I know I am on a few rosters. So yeah, you could do a lot worse. And Coleman too. And I saw a few people on like Reddit asking if Coleman's on waivers, should I pick him up? Yeah, absolutely. If Coleman's, they basically invested a first-round pick in him. He is Josh Allen's rookie receiver they picked out for him. Whatever I think of him or whatever his tape looks like so far, he has no business being on waivers at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, he's been at least on the field, right? Like he's not getting the looks, whether or not that is separation or Josh Allen is going elsewhere with the ball. It is what it is, but Coleman and Shakir are both like running as the primary guys on the field. The first 2 wide receivers out for the Bills. My worry about
Yeah.
this Bills team is it's just fundamentally a different Bills team without Diggs there, and there's just not a wide receiver 1 at this point, right? They let Gabe Davis walk. They got rid of Diggs. It's just kind of like a collection of guys that Josh Allen can spread the ball out to. To me, right now, Shakir is probably the more startable option, but I don't feel great about any of these pass catchers other than Kincaid, who it hasn't felt great yet either, right? So I'm much more like this is like a Josh Allen, James Cook team. You just got to start Kincaid. Then everyone else, I'm fine leaving on my bench if I can afford it. Then the Jaguars, I think it's almost time to start having a conversation about Trevor. Listen, he hasn't won a game since Thanksgiving of last year. Like, I think it's like 8 straight games he's lost or something insane. He's put together 3 good quarters of football through the first 2 weeks. Through the first 2 weeks, it is, he just misses a lot of throws. Like everyone's kind of said that. I just agree with it. He just misses a lot of throws. I think that his weapons have gotten better, and there's no excuse for him to be playing like the way he has been. So. I don't know. I'd feel really good about ETN and Brian Thomas Jr. Everyone else on this team is kind of an ancillary piece. And to me, Christian Kirk, this isn't the offense for him anymore. He's not on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. They're not really giving him the type of work that he did have before. He's borderline droppable to me. Like it hurts because he was the first wide receiver going out of this team. He was the first one drafted. I wasn't taking any of him because why would you take a slot wide receiver who's not on the field on
Yeah.
if it's 2 wide receiver set, right? Like I don't get why
Zero.
the price was what it was.
0 shares. I have 0 shares.
But yeah, I would give him another week, see if maybe he can do something here. But yeah, drop watch for him. All right, last but not least, we got the second Monday night game. We got the Redskins going into Cincinnati to play the Bengals. The Redskins have an implied team total of 19.5 points, and the Bengals have an implied team total of 27 points. For the Redskins, our starts are Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson. We're sitting Scary Terry and Ben Sano, and we're tricky decisioning Zach Ertz. And then for the Bengals, we're starting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Zach Moss. We're sitting Chase Brown, and then we're tricky decisioning Mike Gesicki and Andre Isovius. So we'll start with the Redskins side first. I know that we have said earlier in the show that we only list people who are fantasy relevant. Ben Sano is on the slide because I was in a Twitter argument with this guy, this fantasy analyst, who was telling us how excited they were about Ben Sano, and I said, dude, Ertz is the number one wide. He's the number one tight end on this team. Gave him the clown emoji, got blocked. Would you look at that? Guess who was the leading receiver week 2? Zach Ertz. He's old. It's gonna feel disgusting. He will be involved. And then I guess the other kind of shocking one, right, is Terry. Listen, man, it feels terrible as a Terry McLaurin owner. I've taken shares of Terry this year. I was of the opinion that he was the only real serious playmaker on this Redskins team, and Jaden Daniels would have to look for him. I underestimated Cliff Kingsbury's ability to draw screens and not throw the ball down the field. Like it's weird because Jaden throws a pretty good deep ball, and right now Terry's ADOT is terrible. I believe he has 8 receptions and 32 yards through 2 weeks. It's
Yep.
terrible, and the usage is not looking good. So, in my opinion, until you start seeing this offense look a little bit different, right? And this offense look more willing to push it down the field, Terry's got to be on your bench until further notice. And for the Bengals, this is an interesting one. That obviously we were kind of on is Burrow dead watch. I don't think that's the case anymore. But this is a Redskins team that is very gettable. I still think Burrow, he's not totally right yet, but he should be good enough here. So Burrow and Chase and Zach Moss, the another running back one. This is just the Ted was right on positions bull. I was like Zach Moss pilled kind of going into drafts, and it's clear he's pulled away as the preferred back. Whether or not Chase Brown is more talented and will get more work going into the season, who knows? I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are of the opinion that Chase Brown's a better player. I don't disagree, but sometimes the better player isn't always the fantasy guy you want until the team makes that call, right? And then we're tricky decisioning Gasecki and Yoshivas. Gasecki, he had a big week last week. He was basically the primary.
Well,
He had more yards and targets than Jamar Chase, which is, if that's happening, I think there's something weird with your offense. The reason we're tricky decisioning him is they have 3 tight ends. The Bengals have a three-headed monster at tight end with Drew Sample and Gasicki, and I forgot who the other guy was, but yeah, it seems sketchy. Like I get that Gasicki had a good week last week. I get that some people probably picked him up on waivers who are desperate at the tight end position. It just wouldn't shock me, even in a plus matchup, if you get a weird 1 point game here just because of usage. And then Yoshivas, as long as T. Higgins is out, he is operating as the wide receiver too, as disgusting as that is. Last week, he burned the house down. He had 2 catches for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the touchdowns technically got you there. I am not encouraged by the usage. I am not encouraged by the talent whatsoever. And I think Burrow's a little bit weird, but again, it's the Redskins. Danny Dimes had success against them last week. Malik Neighbors had a career year, top 8 all-time rookie wide receiver game. It's got the fantasy community just spinning around and all excited. I think that is a Washington Redskins stat, and it is not a Malik Neighbors or New York Giants being good thing. So yeah, fire up your Bengals where you can here. This is going to be. It doesn't get much better than this from a facing a defense. Do you have anything you want to add on to this one?
no, I mean, I would say it's time to officially panic on Chase, like true blue panic on Chase if he doesn't go off this week.
Yeah,
That's
agree.
that's emergency. Everyone's been saying, well, look at the bad 2 games he had last year, that he'll come around and all that. And I do tend to agree with that, but this is where I'm panicking about it if he doesn't.
Yeah, it has to be this week. And the Bengals, there's just some weirdness going on there, man, with like Joe Burrow having to shove Jamar Chase. Chase is just yelling at refs. T. Higgins, there's some theories out there right now that he's sitting out on purpose because he's taking out insurance on his contract. It feels weird there for a team that, everyone was kind of excited about coming into the year. They played the Chiefs tight. I was shocked they were in that game. I was shocked at how close it was, but I don't
That's
know.
probably that's a result of probably really buttoned up coaching, I think, But dude, I took no Bengals shares at all besides two or three, round 9, 10 Chase Brown. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I would not want to be holding heavy Bengals bags right now. I know everyone's saying to go trade for him. I saw Burrow on trade target list, Chase on trade target list.
All right, that's going to do it for us this week. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. Question of the week. Which Monday night game will you be watching between the Bills and Jags and the Redskins and Bengals? I'll personally be tuned in to the Bills and Jags, but let us know if there are any Washington fans in the comments. And we'll catch you on Friday for the gambling episode.